My father called me on a cold November morning while I was unlocking the front door of the elementary school where I taught 4th grade. The sky was still grey, and the parking lot lights were glowing against the damp pavement. I balanced a stack of papers under one arm and answered the phone with the other hand, expecting to hear his usual cheerful voice asking about my week. Instead, there was silence. Not the comfortable silence that sometimes exists between family members who know each other well, but the heavy kind that makes your stomach tighten before a single word is spoken. "Emily," he finally said. And I immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" He took a breath. "It's your mother." For a moment the world seemed to stop moving. My mother had been fighting heart disease for years, but she was stubborn and determined. Every time a doctor warned her to slow down, she smiled and continued taking care of everyone around her. She cooked for neighbours when they were sick. She volunteered at church. She remembered birthdays that everyone else forgot. In my mind, she had become permanent, as though kindness itself could keep a person alive forever. "What about Mum?" I asked. Dad's voice broke. "She's gone." The papers slipped from my arm and scattered across the sidewalk. I don't remember much after that. I remember sitting in my car with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers hurt. I remember driving the 40 miles back to my hometown through tears that blurred the road ahead. Most of all, I remember thinking that I should have been there. The guilt arrived before I even reached the hospital. It stayed much longer than the grief. My name is Emily Carter. I was 36 years old when I lost my mother, and until that day I thought I understood what family meant. I believed love was something permanent. I believed the people who mattered most would always have time for each other. I believed there would always be another visit, another phone call, another holiday dinner around my mother's crowded dining room table. I was wrong. The hospital room was quiet when I arrived. My father sat beside the bed staring at the floor. My younger brother Ryan stood near the window with red eyes and folded arms. Neither of them spoke when I walked in. We simply looked at each other and understood that nothing would ever be exactly the same again. My mother looked peaceful. That somehow made it worse. For years I had imagined loss as something dramatic. I thought there would be alarms, doctors running through hallways, desperate last words. Instead, there was only stillness. The woman who had spent her entire life taking care of everyone else was gone. The funeral was held 4 days later. The church was packed. People lined the walls because there weren't enough seats. Former co-workers came. Old neighbours came. People I had never met came. One by one, they told stories about my mother. She had paid someone's electric bill without telling anyone. She had delivered meals to a family after a house fire. She had spent months visiting an elderly widow who had no relatives nearby. As I listened, I realised something surprising. My mother had built an entire community through small acts of kindness. Most of them had happened quietly. Most of them had happened without recognition. She never needed applause. She simply showed up. After the funeral, reality arrived. Dad was 72 years old and had never handled the household finances. Mum had always managed everything. She paid bills, scheduled appointments, organised insurance paperwork, and remembered every important date. Without her, the simple machinery of daily life began to wobble. I stepped in automatically. First it seemed temporary. I organised bank accounts. I helped sort paperwork. I arranged doctor's appointments. I created calendars and reminders. My brother Ryan thanked me repeatedly. Dad thanked me too. For a while, helping felt natural. It felt like love. 3 months passed, then 6, then 12. The phone calls never stopped. Dad needed help understanding insurance forms. Ryan needed advice about his mortgage. An aunt needed assistance filling out medical paperwork. A cousin needed someone to drive her to an appointment. Somehow, I became the person everyone called when life became complicated. I rarely said no. Part of me enjoyed being needed. Another part was afraid of what would happen if I stopped. One rainy evening, nearly 2 years after my mother's death, I sat alone in my apartment eating take-out Chinese food while answering emails from work. My birthday had been 3 days earlier. No one in my family had remembered. Not Dad, not Ryan, not my aunts, not my cousins. No one. The realization hit harder than I expected. I had spent 2 years managing everyone else's problems. I knew every medical appointment, every insurance deadline, every family emergency. Yet nobody remembered a single day that belonged to me. I stared at my phone for a long time. There were no missed calls, no messages, no apologies, nothing. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. If I stopped carrying everyone else, would anyone notice I was gone? The answer frightened me, because I wasn't sure. The next weekend, I drove to my father's house. The old maple tree in the front yard had grown taller since Mum died. Everything else looked exactly the same. Dad answered the door with a smile. "Emily." I hugged him. For a moment, I almost forgot why I had come. Then we sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where my mother had served thousands of meals over the years. The same table where she had balanced checkbooks, planned holidays, and listened patiently to every family problem. I took a deep breath. "Dad, I need to talk to you." His smile faded. "What is it?" I folded my hands together. "I can't keep doing everything." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" I explained gently. I told him I was exhausted. I told him I loved helping, but couldn't be responsible for every detail of everyone's lives. I told him I needed boundaries. The conversation was calm, respectful, honest. Yet I could see the disappointment in his eyes, not because he was angry, because he was scared. My mother had spent decades holding everything together. After she died, I stepped into the empty space she left behind. Now, I was stepping back. For the first time, Dad had to face how much he depended on me. "I didn't realize," he said quietly. "Neither had I." That evening, before I left, Dad walked me to the front porch. The sun was setting behind the trees. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then he surprised me. "You know," he said, "your mother worried about this." I turned toward him. "Worried about what?" "She worried that everyone would lean on you too much." I felt a lump rise in my throat. Dad stared across the yard. "She used to say Emily has the biggest heart in the family, and that's exactly why we need to be careful with it." The tears came before I could stop them. For years I had measured love by usefulness. I believed being needed proved I mattered. My mother had understood something I didn't. Real love is not about how much weight you can carry. Real love notices when you're carrying too much. That conversation changed everything. Not immediately. Change rarely happens that way. It happens slowly. I started saying no when I needed rest. I stopped solving problems people could solve themselves. I allowed phone calls to wait until morning. I stopped feeling guilty for having my own life. Some relatives didn't like it. A few became distant, others adjusted. The surprising part was what happened to my father. Instead of growing angry, he grew stronger. He learned how to manage his appointments. He learned how to handle paperwork. He learned how to ask for help without expecting someone else to take complete responsibility. Little by little, he rebuilt his confidence. 2 years later, he called me on another cold November morning. For a moment, hearing his voice brought back memories of the worst phone call of my life. Then he laughed. "Don't worry. Nobody died." I laughed too. "What happened?" "I just wanted to tell you something." "What?" There was pride in his voice. "I made your mother's pumpkin pie recipe by myself." I smiled. "How did it turn out?" "Terrible." We both laughed. Then he added something I'll never forget. "But I figured it out myself." When the call ended, I sat quietly for a long time. The grief of losing my mother never disappeared. It simply changed shape. What remained was gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson she taught without realizing it. Gratitude for every kindness she planted in the world. Gratitude for the simple truth she left behind. Love is not measured by how much you sacrifice until nothing remains. Love is measured by the people who care whether you're carrying too much. My mother spent her life showing up for others. After she was gone, I finally learned to show up for myself too. And in the end, that may have been the most important lesson she ever taught me.